Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to check a couple things here. Make sure you're hearing me. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday, start of the week to everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Mike Murphy, and this is Open Mic Night every Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I thank you for joining me live, and if you're watching on the replay, thanks for coming by. So I'm going to give it a little bit of time here, and if you are watching and you can't hear me, let me know. Or if you can't see me or if there's anything off, just let me know. That would be great. Super helpful. And I'm just setting up a few things here. I realized that I had I switched to the last minute where I'm going to do a couple different screen shares. So I'm going to set those up so I can view. But tonight I thought what we would do is go into Adobe After Effects. I did a little poll earlier and it seemed the majority of the votes got After Effects. So I will we'll go through that and go through a few things in After Effects. And let me just set this up so I can I want to be able to make sure I can zoom in to where you're seeing me well. If I do that, it's not going to. That was an old one. Let's see, that was last week. So yeah, I want to make sure that I am pulling up. There we go. Let's just see here. I want to make sure I have enough room so everybody can see me. I look a little big, so let me move down a little bit. And let's make another view here so I can jump in full screen. I'm gonna just a full view. So hope everybody's having a great Monday today. Hope you had a great weekend. I did. I'm in Old Naples, Florida, in case you're not sure where I preside. We're beautiful weather here. We've gotten a little bit of rain in the last couple of days, but overall we're heating up. We're coming into summer hot, so it feels good, but definitely on the hot side. So what I thought we would do tonight, I'll show you a preview here, and I want to kind of start from the basics in Adobe After Effects, but also give you enough value to where it's not boring. So I think a lot of people that come here are in the newer stage to Adobe After Effects, and so I want to be able to just make sure that everybody knows really the basics, the fundamentals, before we even get too far into it. If you are watching live, any questions you have, or if you're want me to repeat something or do something over or zoom in or something that you're just not sure about, just leave a chat or a comment in the chat, and I will absolutely try to go over something or explain something a little bit clearer if there's something that you're just not sure about. So After Effects has, if you're new to it, it feels intimidating for a lot of people. But if you have any experience in the other Adobe products, such as especially Adobe Photoshop, After Effects is really just, a lot of people used to call it Photoshop for animation, basically. It's very similar in a lot of different ways. My background is in Photoshop. That's really where I started in the Creative Cloud and with the Adobe products. And I spent most of my time in Photoshop. So I think that really helped when I went to Adobe After Effects. And by no means am I, a master animator or anything like that. I'd like to be one day, but by no means am I that, far into Adobe After Effects. But if you do know Photoshop, or if you're familiar with the other programs, After Effects has a lot of similarities. They're in layers. You add effects. It's actually a really amazing program. And if you are intimidated by it, I can tell you, don't be. Really dive in and try to, really just play around with it, because it's pretty amazing. So what I'm doing now is just going to try to create a few little views so I could move around quickly, so I can, show you different areas on the, the timeline, and I'll zoom back out and kind of do an overview of everything. But so let me do this. AE. It looks like I have a little bit of delay. I'm kind of watching the replay, and but hopefully it's not showing up on your end. And I made a very, very simple animation for tonight, not knowing, what level. So hopefully it's not too boring. And then I'll do one more here. I am using Ecamm Live tonight, so if you're wondering what I'm using to do, share my screen, share my cameras, I am using Ecamm Live. And we'll go to Effect Controls. Effect Controls is up here. Okay, so now I'm going to go into Full View, Timeline, Effects and Presets. Let me change this view a little bit so I can get myself out of there without taking up all the real estate. Alrighty. Let me zoom back out here. Okay, so this is, and again, any questions that anybody has along the way, please just drop a comment and I will get to those as I see them. And let me, so when you open Adobe After Effects, let me go here. I'll try to bring this a little bit away so I don't get distracted. So when you open Adobe After Effects, well, let me do this. Let me go back and show you what we're gonna be making. So just a very, very simple animation. Really, really simple. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to be making tonight. And it looks like I just lost my self here. So let me back out here just a little bit and I lost my camera, so I'm going to bring myself back in. We definitely don't want that camera. Okay, so now we're going to be able to see full view of what we're making here. Okay. Everything that you're seeing here is being animated using the position property. The position property is the one you're probably going to use the most in After Effects. And when I say that you're using the position property, that means that you're adding keyframes, which is sort of the fundamentals of animation. Keyframe animation you've probably heard of. So Valerie, nice to see you. It's a good thing you were late because I was sort of creating and talking at the same time. So the beginning is sort of distracting. My fault completely. So what we are using right now is Adobe After Effects. And this is sort of the, the tool. It's sort of the industry standard for motion graphics, motion design, animation. It's, used by, if you're in the Adobe Creative Cloud suite, it is, integrates with everything, Premiere, Photoshop. You can bring in Illustrator files and you can just build, layers of animation and still images, and you can use audio, and it really is you can do 3D. It's an amazing program, but it's a really great tool. If you are a content creator, it's a great tool to learn to build assets for, Instagram or for, for any of your social media channels. Being able to, bring in, just little animations or create them on the fly is, just as we know, there's so many tools that you can do that for. But After Effects is kind of one of those big gun tools, but it's also not that hard to really, make some pretty cool things. So Valerie, if you were, let me ask you, do you have any interest in Adobe After Effects, or if it's something that you're sort of been like, I really should learn that, or is it just something that you're, I'd be curious if it seems as though a lot of people are wanting to learn it. Back in the day, like a few years ago, it felt like it was a tool that a lot of people it wasn't fresh on their minds. Now with the, video and, as things are becoming more animated and more creative and more like people are creating content for all different things. After Effects is now starting to, it feels as though people are really trying to get in and learn it. So, and you don't have to know, I'm not that deep into animation, or, I don't know a lot about animation as much as I wish I did. And, but like what you're looking at right now is just sort of my podcast cover art. It's in a horizontal format, but you can make something like this, put some animation behind it, and have put some music around it, and quickly create something kind of cool for social. So Wayne, thank you so much. I appreciate that, and it means a lot when I hear people say that they are learning from my content. So, obviously that's why I put it out there, but when I hear it, it just truly makes my day every time. So thank you so much for the comments on that. Okay, so this is Adobe After Effects. And when you come into After Effects, you basically, let me do this, new project. When you come into Adobe After Effects, no interest at this time. So if you came here for Screenflow tonight, Valerie, I apologize. I took a little vote about or I put up a little poll, and it seemed as though the majority of people were interested in After Effects, so I went with that. I was kind of open for tonight, hoping that I could cover anything that was, most of interest. In fact, the reason I was sort of scrambling to get things up and running again is because I planned on going into Screenflow, and then it seemed like the majority wanted After Effects, so I flipped the switch a little bit. But Final Cut, Motion, I have both of those tools on my computer, and they're both great. And I think Motion is like the easy version of After Effects, and not when I say easy, I hesitate to say easy because it in itself is not easy, but it's a way to make really, really amazing graphic or animations with sort of pre-built effects. I feel like Motion makes it much easier to do like really awesome animations, and whereas After Effects you kind of have to start from scratch, unless you buy like a template or something. But yeah, so anyways, so when you do open Adobe After Effects, you get this screen. This is sort of the thing you do every time. And After Effects is built on compositions. A composition is basically like a sequence in Premiere or, Canvas, new document. It's the thing that you are going to build up on. You're going to add your layers to a composition. With After Effects, you can create multiple compositions, and you can nest compositions inside of each other. That's kind of the power of After Effects, is that you create one main composition, and you can just create new ones and just keep adding them into each other. Where it can be a little complicated, it's also super powerful in that you can just design and do different things, and and it keeps things nice and streamlined and neat as well if you just keep building into compositions. Or thing you will hear if you're in After Effects is pre-comps. And a pre-comp is just a nested group of layers inside of a composition. So I'm going to create a new composition, and when I create a new composition, I basically am going to, I'll bring this up a little bit, but this is just like creating any new document in Photoshop or Screenflow or wherever, but you just set the dimensions. How big do you want your composition? That's going to be the project that you're building on, and 1920 by 1080 is the wide. 30 frames per second is fine. You can lower it if you want to do a little more stop motion feel, or depending on what you want. But then I'm going to put this back to 30. And then here you tell it's the duration. I'm going to make this duration 5 seconds. Little bonus tip: 5 comma is seconds, so 10 comma is 10 seconds, 5 comma is 5 seconds. And a thing in After Effects that confuses a lot of people, you see this background color. I keep this navy blue, that's sort of my brand color, but all this color is really just a placeholder color for you, the color that you want to design your composition on. The color that you choose in your composition, the composition that you choose here does not, when you export the video, it will not show up. So again, this background color that you see here can be any color that you really like visually, and because it's not going to show up in anywhere. I'll show you what I mean in a minute, but I'm going to click OK, and that creates a new composition. And if I zoom back out here so you can see it, so now we just have this blue, this is the composition window, basically, this blue. And there's a little transparency switch, and if I click on the transparency switch right here, those checkerboards indicate that this is transparent. If I was to click this and there was a solid color here where there was actually a color that was going to export when you do a video, if I clicked on the transparency grid, you wouldn't see these checkerboards indicating transparency. You would see a color. And I can prove that if I was to add a new solid layer, new solid, I'm going to make it the exact same color. So let me do this for a second. I'm going to make the same color as this blue. Make it comp size. Click OK. So now it looks exactly the same. But I have a blue solid layer you can see here in my layers panel. And if I press the transparency grid now, you see it stays blue. If I was to take away that solid and just use the background, that's the background color we choose. But when I add a solid, that means that I want to see a blue color solid when I export this video. So a little something in After Effects to be aware of. That throws a lot of people off when you first get started. You see this blue, and then they export it, and there's no background. You need to add a solid, or you need to add like a rectangle. You know, I could add a rectangle and fill it in with a color, and that would also be a, you know, an actual color that gets exported. So Wayne, how long does it take to be good in After Effects? Just like 20 years, I think, is a good number. 10 years? No. A lot depends on your, I would say a lot depends on your knowledge of, or your familiarity, I should say, not necessarily knowledge of the Adobe products. If you are kind of in the family of Adobe products, Audition, Photoshop, Premiere, then it's much easier because you kind of know your way around. You sort of know your way around just the basics of the Adobe stuff. You know what you're looking for. Again, not mandatory that you know anything, but if you're pretty adept in one of those programs, After Effects will just sort of be an extension of one of those. And in terms of if you're brand new, there are so many tutorials out there for one. But you really, the way to learn, or I think one of the best ways to get good fast is to really just like figure out something you want to do. Like figure out an animation that you want to create, and take enough tutorials to get you to do that one thing. And then as you build that one project, it could take you, a week to get through it. By the time you're done with that, you're going to pick up 10 new tools in your, in your arsenal that you can reuse over and over again. Then you just keep building on that. So for me, I do think the best way to learn like all of the creative projects is to just say, okay, I would love to be able to animate this little thing of mine for, a specific purpose, and then just start trying to find, lessons that would get you close to what you want. And you just start building little steps along the way. And then after you do this a couple times, all of a sudden you have like 5 things that you know how to do. And it might not seem like a lot at first, but when you do another 5 and another 5, before you know it, you're in all of these programs. They're too big for anybody to learn everything. You only need to know the things that you're really wanting to do. And then before you know it, you just start experimenting. You find something new and you just add that to your, to your list of things that you know how to do. So not really a good answer, but I would say, it does take time. Nothing is easy in all of these tools. But it is pretty easy to do something really simple. Like what I'm going to show you tonight, you could be doing this by tomorrow. So, let me jump right in here and make sure that I'm checking a few different things to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So I have a composition, and now I'm gonna layer up this composition. So I'm gonna build on top of this composition, and to do so, I'm gonna come over to my Adobe Creative Cloud libraries. And if you're not using libraries, start. They are the best. This is where you can store your logos and graphics and things that you want to reuse over and over again. And I apologize, my voice is cracking a little bit, but you basically can keep anything you want. So I'm going to just drag things onto this canvas. Literally click and drag. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to select this bottom layer. I'm going to come up to this over here to this align panel. I'm going to center it. You see it just moved to the center. And then I'm going to align it to the bottom. I'm going to select the orange color. When you select something, when you select something, you're going to see a little bounding box around it. So I'm going to move it over here just so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to come over here to this align panel, and you have different options up here. So you can choose whether you want to do it to a selection or the composition. So I want it to the actual composition. So I have that orange layer selected. I'm going to center it to the center. It happens to be the same width, so I know it's going to fit. You might not always be this perfect, but and then I'm going to click this one to center it to the top, or to align it to the top. And now I have 2 layers. That's going to be my background. Easy as that. And if you come down here into the layers panel, I'm going to zoom in so you can get a better view. You see here, let's see if you can, I want to get you both. So I've got 2 layers here. If I hide the visibility, you can see that was the orange layer on the top, and that's the yellow layer on the bottom. So now we're just going to keep building onto this. So what I like to do generally is, I mean, it really depends on what you're doing. I think that, excuse me. I think the key to, people who are actually very skilled in animation, or, maybe who do it as a career, planning your animation in advance is huge. Knowing what you're going to create really is the correct way to do it. But probably when you're first getting started, you're going to be like a lot of creatives and just build stuff on the fly. I mean, I do it all the time. But it is a good idea to have an idea of what you want if you're really, wanting to do something. If you kind of know what you want, being able to sort of visualize what you're going to create is really helpful. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm just going to drag a couple more things in here. We're keeping this one real simple, but yeah, so the stream will be available. I'm saving all of them, even regardless of how, I'm saving them all. I think I'll cringe later watching a lot of them on the replay if I was ever to watch them. But yes, I am. I don't plan on deleting them. So if you ever want to go back, just jump through and find the good parts. But it will be saved, Wayne. And I'm going to just add on here. So I'm clicking and dragging on. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to tap on, let me come down here so you can zoom in a little bit. I'm going to press S. Oops, sorry to be so loud. I'm going to press S, and that's going to bring up scale. That allows you, the scale is basically your, make things bigger or smaller. There's these little numbers here. You can just drag to make it big. You can scale to make it small. I'm going to click this and type in 60. I think I thought would look good. And I'm just going to line it up to the place I want. Easy as that. I'm going to drag out a logo. Let's see if I got a logo handy. Well, I know I do. I just got to find them. I'm going to drag out a logo. You just move them around just like you would any other piece of software or any graphic tool. This one's not aligned. And then I'm going to drag this little guy out there. Say 50%, let's say 60. And then I'm going to drag my little school bus out there. Where's my bus? And everything that I'm dragging is from my Adobe Creative Cloud library. But you can do this from, you know, files on your hard drive or wherever. I just happen to have them all saved in the same place because I tend to use the same graphics over and over again. So I like them all in one place. And tonight's animation is not going to be perfect, but so now we have a basic, you know, layout, and now I would start to animate this. So sorry about that. I'm using the scroll wheel to zoom the canvas window in and out. And you press the space bar if you want to move this around. Let's just say you wanted to get this into a different position. I can do that. And then I'm going to drag my playhead. That's this thing right here. You drag that to where you want to, you know, set keyframes. I'm going to drag this to, let's say, the 1 second mark. So 0 to 1 second. Actually, maybe I'll make it 2 seconds. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to select the layers that I want to animate the position property. The position property is the keyboard shortcut P. So I'm going to select Learn, Create, Move. That's this banner. I'm going to click this logo in the top. And then I'm going to connect this avatar here. I'm going to leave the bust layer alone. I'm not going to touch the background. I'm going to tap on the letter P. So P brings up the position property. You can see it expands. Then I'm just, with 3 of them selected, with 3 of the layers selected, I'm just going to click on the stopwatch. So let me zoom in so make sure you can see that, because this is kind of the key to everything. So I tapped on P to bring up the position property. I have the 3 layers selected. You can just see that this one down here. Currently, you can see the banner. And then what I'm going to do is just click on the little stopwatch. You can see, I don't know why it's not showing me. Let me see what's going on here. Okay, it wasn't showing my cursor, so I didn't know what's going on. But you see this little stopwatch right here next to the word position? That is how you set the first keyframe. So since I have 3 layers selected, when I click on a stopwatch, let me make sure that you can see it. I want you to see so you see my playhead is, let's just move this here so you can get a better visual of it, what happens, and I can move the keyframes after. So when I click on a stopwatch, all I have to do is click on one, and since the others are selected, it's going to add a keyframe for that same property. So I'm going to click, and now if you look under the current time indicator or the playhead, it just added 3 keyframes. Now, when you add a keyframe, nothing happens. You have to add another keyframe in order to tell After Effects that you want the animation to happen between this keyframe and that keyframe. So what I'm going to do, let's zoom out so you can see what I'm doing here. I am going to drag the playhead back to the beginning. So this is really called the CTI, or the current time indicator. So you might see that if you're taking tutorials, otherwise known as the playhead. And then if you were to I'm going to bring this back to the beginning of the timeline. So that's the start. So we have these 3 keyframes here. And now I'm going to start moving these layers one by one. So I'm just going to click off. So nothing is selected. I'm going to click on this avatar layer. That's this picture of me down here in the corner. I'm going to press the shift key. That's going to make sure that when I move the graphic, I'm going to move it to the right. When I press the shift key, that's going to make sure that it doesn't move up or down, so it stays in a line. It stays in alignment. So I'm just going to click, hold the shift key, and you see there's a little like rubber band right in the middle of that graphic. That's indicating that this is going to move from the right to the left, just like that. So I'm holding the shift key, I'm dragging it to the right, I have my finger on the mouse, and then I'm going to let go. And as soon as I let go, let me come in here so you can see. as soon as I let go, it's kind of hard to see, but it added a keyframe right there. So when you create the first keyframe, you click on the stopwatch. Okay. I clicked on that stopwatch to add a keyframe. But when you create the second keyframe, basically After Effects is waiting for you to make a move, and it's going to automatically add that second keyframe. After you move the graphic and let go, it adds a keyframe. All these keyframes can be moved around so you can reset the timing, but that's the basic of it. And now if I zoom out, so we have two keyframes, right? I drag the play at the beginning. Oops. So watch what happens here. As I drag the playhead, you can see the animation is happening. That's because it's going from this keyframe. So the first keyframe, I am off the canvas, or off the composition. And as I drag, I'm making my way to the second keyframe. And when I set the second keyframe, the position of this graphic was here. So After Effects is creating the animation for me. This is called tweening. So it's in between the two keyframes. After Effects is basically using math and calculating the animation. It's kind of magical. But it's knowing how much distance, basically how fast I can get between those two keyframes based on the, where I set them in the timeline. And if that doesn't make sense, if I move the keyframes closer together, so watch what happens here. If I move these keyframes closer together, so you see these bottom two right here, they're very close. And if I drag the playhead back and I press the space bar, the animation moves pretty quick, right? So you're just looking at pretty quick. If I take the second keyframe and move it pretty far out, so the distance between them is further apart, and now if I go back to the beginning and press the space bar, it's slowing down the animation. So the closer the keyframes are together, the faster the animation. Move them apart to slow things down. And this is how you build your animations. You basically, everybody probably has their own different ways. Some people know exactly how much they want. They're, if you've been doing it for a while, you know that you want a second in between them or half a second. But basically you create the animations and then you adjust the keyframes to get the animation, the right speed, the way that you want them to look. If it's too slow, it doesn't look good. If it's too fast, it's, that's the art form of animation, is getting the timing right, getting everything, to where it's basically taking the viewer on this, little journey with animation, but doing it in a way that is enjoyable. If it's too slow, too fast, then it changes the experience for the watcher. The people who know what they're doing get the timing just right. So, and that's not me, but I try. So, we've already animated one, okay? So we just have the avatar coming in, okay? And when I'm done animating everything, I can determine if it's too fast, too slow. That's looking pretty good to me. And that's under a second right there, from start to finish, okay? So now let's animate this logo at the very top here. I want this logo to come in, I want this logo to come in from the top and come down, okay? So I've already got a keyframe for this one. So I've got one keyframe. It's going to end right here. And now I need to bring it back. And now where do I want to start the animation? I want it to start at the top. So with it selected, I'm pressing the Shift key so it doesn't go left or right. It's just going to go in a straight line. I'm just going to drag up, okay? You see there's that little rubber band thing that's sort of indicating that there's already a keyframe and that I'm basically creating this animation. I can go any direction I want, but I just want to go straight up. So I have the Shift key pressed. And when I get off camera, it's just basically when I can't see it anymore, I'm going to let go. And if we look under the timeline or under the playhead, it created an animation or a keyframe. So now if I drag it, there it is. So we just created our second animation. Pretty cool. And again, we are using the position property, P. You have to learn P. That's a fundamental to Adobe After Effects. Okay. Let me just make sure we're all on board here. I'm not seeing. There it is. I want to just make sure that I'm not missing any. Okay, so let's animate this banner here. I'm going to take the banner from top or from the bottom back into view. Okay, so we have, that's this one right here. We already have a keyframe for position. I'm going to drag it back a little bit. I'm going to select it. It's already selected. I'm going to press the shift key so it doesn't go left or right. I'm going to go straight down. Let go. So now we've got me animating over from right to left. We have the logo at the top coming down. And then we have this banner. And the bus is just staying there. We're going to just kind of ignore that for now. Okay. So, I mean, we're most of the way done. Let's just make sure. I want to make sure you can see everything. So, okay. So now what I would do typically, since I have the keyframes, the basics down, what I would do is start, jazzing it up a little bit and start to, make sure the timing's right and add a few little things to make it just a little bit better. So I want to start with me, the avatar in the bottom right there coming on. So I want that to come on. I like the timing of that. And next to the logo at the top, a little tip for you. If you want to select all of the keyframes, so if I wanted to select these keyframes and move them here, if you click on the position property or the property that has keyframes, as soon as I click on any one of these, it's going to select all of the keyframes on the timeline. You can also just drag out a selection. If you just wanted to drag over them, you can. But if you click on a property, any property, if there's keyframes, it's going to select all of the keyframes for that property. Okay, so I want to select the keyframes for the logo layer. That's the one on the top there, because I want to adjust them. I want to move them so they're both selected. So basically what I want is when I come on, the other comes down. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same for the banner. So let's see here so you can visually see what I'm talking about. I'm apologizing, I'm getting stuck on my mat here. So what I'm going to do is select the position property. That selected the keyframes. They're both selected. And I'm going to drag that out. So now we've got, if I press the space bar, let's zoom out so you can, to make sure you see it. I'll zoom it up a little bit. Press the space bar. Pretty cool. We have an animation just like that. A couple things that I'll do to make this a little bit better. I'm going to select all the keyframes. So I'm going to click on the properties of the position. I'll press the shift key and select the others. Actually, I don't want that. I just want this position. So I have all the keyframes highlighted. I'm going to tap on F9. F9 is a keyboard shortcut that you must know if you're using After Effects. That is Easy Ease. And if you don't know what that is, or if that doesn't make sense, if you right click and go to Keyframe Assistant, see Easy Ease, keyboard shortcut F9. That just makes a very boring animation just a little bit smoother. F9 is just one of those things. You don't use it everywhere, although you tend to with when you first do it, but you tend to, the Easy Ease is that just gives it a little bit smoother of an animation. It's kind of a must know keyboard shortcut. When you use Easy Ease, it takes us from a diamond keyframe to an hourglass. That's when you see the hourglass, that means you know that you have Easy Ease those keyframes. So I just did it for all of them. As you get better and more understanding of After Effects, you'll realize sometimes you might only want to do it on like the second keyframe, and you know, there's all sorts of things. Don't worry about any of that when you're first getting started. This is basics. So, and then the other thing I would do is I'm going to click these little circles right here. If I can zoom in, you can maybe read the tooltip a little better. Okay, so you can see the keyframes now have that hourglass, right? That's Easy Ease keyframes. And I got to that by hitting F9 or right clicking. Oops, I'm right over it, of course. Right clicking, keyframe assistant, Easy Ease, F9. Then the other sort of thing that ends up making things just a little bit better, depending on what you're doing. I mean, a lot better, really, but is adding some motion blur. So your eyes, typically when we see things move, we're used to seeing a little bit of motion blur. That's kind of a natural way. So when you're animating, putting a little bit of motion blur just gives it a little bit more realistic. You see just a little slight blur. And I'll show you. Let's see here if I move this over here. Again, I'm trying to do a little bit of making sure you see and being able to see the composition. So that looks like it might work. To add motion blur, what you need to do is first enable it. That's above the timeline. So you see here, that little tooltip says enables motion blur for all layers. So first you enable it, and it turns blue. That tells you that it's enabled, but then you need to select the layers that you want to add motion blur to. And you can do so. There's a little, you know, the same symbol here. There's a little column. If you didn't see that column, if you look down the very bottom, let's see here, make sure there's something called toggle switches and modes. So if you don't see, it's right there. That's the motion blur. And hopefully, I just got a thing about my audio, so hopefully nothing is happening with the audio. And sorry about that. I just got a notice about something with audio, so I want to make sure that that's going good. And KC, thanks for stopping by. So motion blur is enabled, and then I'm just going to check these little boxes next to the ones that I want. So I want it on this banner. I want it on the logo at the top. You can see as soon as I add that logo, it added, you can see the motion blur take effect. So let's see here. If I uncheck the motion blur, you see how clear that learn, create, move forward is? As soon as I enabled motion blur, you see it adds that blur, and I'll show you how it, when you move the keyframe, or the timeline, the playhead, excuse me. See that? When it's moving quick, it's not so blurry, but it's blurry enough to where your eyes are going to catch it and give it a much more realistic effect. I'll do the same thing for the avatar here, so I'm just going to click. So now all three of the moving layers that I had have motion blur. And now watch coming into the right. See that? See how realistic that is? If I was to uncheck that, you see now it's sharp, which you might think is okay when it's moving, but when you add a little motion blur, and then you add a little Easy Ease, which gives it that nice little smooth motion, that takes your animations up a whole nother level. So very must know, I would say must know tips if you're just starting out in After Effects. Learning motion blur, easy ease, and setting keyframe for position property. If you know how to do those, you can get started in no time. So where we're at right now, if I bring it back to the beginning, we're kind of done. This is not fancy. And if I wanted to move this bus is going to be tricky because it's on a little bit of an angle, so I'm not going to make it very perfect. But what I'm going to do is basically, I'm just going to come a little bit past. I'm going to set a keyframe for position. Tap P for position. I'm going to click on the stopwatch. Oops, I got me right on there. So I clicked on the stopwatch, and if you look under the playhead, you're going to see here that it added the keyframe. Okay? I'm just going to move it back a little bit in time. The bus layer is selected, and I'm just going to move it to the right. Okay? I'm tapping on the arrow key. This is a little tricky. This requires a little bit more of a movement. I'm going to do easy ease by tapping on F9. I'm going to add motion blur to that bus layer because I'm in a bus that's moving. You got to have some motion blur. And now it's going to come in and it's just going to stop right there. Very, very subtle, but that's just sort of the ending to the animation. Tap on N. N is going to, let me undo that so I can show you that little trick. That's a pretty cool thing to know. If we come down to the timeline, you see my playhead is right here. I'm going to tap on N, the letter N, and what that did was ended the work area. So that little blue line right there is indicates the work area. And the reason I'm doing that is if you just want to sort of preview something in a loop, you can basically end the timeline right there. Sort of a temporary thing. You can actually end it here if you really want it to be, you know, the end of your composition if you want to retime things. But this is a good way of just looping little sections so you can create the work area at a certain space. So if I zoom out of here, move me down a little bit. I'll press the space bar to move it around. That space bar turns into the hand tool. And another little bonus tip, if you look in the top left corner of your keyboard is the tilde key. That's the little squiggly thing, and it's right above the escape key. If you tap on that, you go into full screen, which is the way that I like to preview animations. And then you tap on the space bar when you want to play an animation. So I'm going to press the space bar. And now we have ourselves a very, 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 very basic animation. But this you could make in less than 5 minutes. So if I wasn't speaking and talking, I could just do something like this in 5 minutes and export it. I'll show you how to export. And got a fun little animation. I'm going to tap the tilde key again to go out of full screen mode, and it brings us back into Adobe After Effects. And now we have an animation that we could build on. We could add new things to it. You know, again, tonight was really just to introduce you to how you would just start a basic animation. And the keyframes for position property are the things that you're going to end up using the most. So if you just want to get started practicing, start practicing how you can make things move one thing, just like this. How do you make this happen? And once you understand that whole keyframe concept, you know, add a keyframe, move it, you create animation. Once you're able to do that, you just start building on that knowledge of, oh, that was cool. Now you add another one. All of these are doing the exact same thing. But when you put them in different locations and add different timing, you can have a fully, I could make this look totally different if I speeded everything up or slowed everything down or changed their position at all. So all good stuff. And when you're ready to export, a couple different ways you can do it. But if you go to the File menu, Export, you can go to Adobe Media Encoder, which is what I typically do, or you can go to the Render Queue. And when you go to the Render Queue, that opens up in Adobe After Effects. So this is sort of the, the in-house is the way I sort of refer to it, is the, the way of exporting without leaving After Effects. If you were to do the other option, so I'll show you the other options. This is the Render Queue. And if you were to go up to the File menu, so if I went to File, Export, and chose Adobe Media Encoder, so when I click on that, that is going to open up Adobe Media Encoder, which has gotten faster. I'm on an M1 Mac, so it's definitely gotten faster. But Adobe Media Encoder, you used to open it and wonder if it was ever going to open. It really was a clunky, it took like minutes to open, which always felt, still kind of slow. And then when it opens, your file isn't there. And sometimes it takes another couple seconds or so. It's a weird program, powerful, so maybe it's just a lot under the hood that we need to not complain about. But now basically you have, this is more or less, I would say, doing the same thing as the Render Queue. I particularly like using the Media Encoder though, which is what we're in now. And the reason that the Media Encoder is so great is that when you are rendering things, and this is particular if you use Adobe Premiere, where when you export a project, let's say you had a really long animation or a video from Premiere, and it maybe it takes a few minutes from Premiere for sure. You can take several minutes before a project is exported. Well, if you use the render, if you export it directly from the program, you can't use the program until it's done exporting. So the reason that Media Encoder is so great is that you can export multiple things at the same time, and it doesn't affect your project. So it's a great tool. You can add things to it, like you can even, you don't have to use it simultaneously with the program, but it's a great tool when it finally opens up. But you can also, this is basically, you can set presets for, I have there's a YouTube preset. If you click on this, there's a gazillion presets here. There's actually a YouTube one that you're not seeing, but that's what this one right here. You can set all these different parameters. You can do audio settings. Let me just try to, so you can see all this. Get your settings the way you want it. You choose where you want it. You click OK, and that's basically going to, I click up here, there's a little play button. That play button is going to say, let's say I want it to my desktop. So I'm going to say Mike Murphy, that's going to be on my desktop. I'm going to click Save. I'm going to click the play button that says, let's go. Then you get this progress bar. That took about all of 2 seconds. I'll go to the now we have sorry, I'm trying to zoom out. Now we have ourselves a little boring but finished animation. Just like that. I am previewing it in QuickTime, which you can loop if you want to. But that is the start to finish in Adobe After Effects. And that was exported using Adobe Media Encoder. I could do the exact same thing if I wanted to go into the render queue in Adobe After Effects, where you're basically setting the same thing. Where do you want to save this file? What quality, what render or codec you're using. You can set all this stuff right here. And sorry, I'm trying to zoom it out. And again, the only issue is when you do render something in Adobe After Effects, while you just have to wait till it's done, which isn't going to take forever. But that is the sort of the benefit of using an external program such as Adobe Media Encoder, so you don't have to wait. And they've done a lot of changes. It's funny. I'm looking at this because I never use the render queue, or I always use Adobe Media Encoder for the most part. And just looking at this, you can tell that there's been a lot of upgrades to the Media Encoder. So they're probably both actually pretty great. The Media Encoder, it definitely has some improvements. I should probably explore that a little bit more. But yeah, that's After Effects in a nutshell. And if I want to go back to this comp, we have ourselves any questions for people who are live? Anything that we're not sure about? Anything that you want me to non-After Effects that you have questions about, or something that you're working on that you're having trouble with, or something that I can help you with before I head out tonight? I was expecting tonight to be just about an hour. But I'm more than welcome to hang out for anybody who has questions about After Effects or related, or something that you're just stuck. Fire away. And if you are watching this on replay and you're wondering what I'm using to live stream, I'm using Ecamm Live, and excellent tool for live streaming and all-purpose video creation, whether you're doing live stream or whether you're creating tutorials, screencasts, presentations. Ecamm Live is truly an amazing piece of software. It really can do everything, and it's incredibly easy to put together your live streams. You trust me, if you're going to be doing live streams, the more prepared you are in advance, the easier, the better. I did a last minute flip tonight, so I definitely felt the strains of starting where you feel like you're just playing catch up and you're not ready. Even though I was ready, I was like, oh, I can make this quick. But you still feel like, oh man, if you can do your stuff in advance, it makes a world of difference. Yeah, but tonight, or every Monday, I will be doing live streams, and my hope is that each Monday I have something that will be of value to you in terms of learning something that you're working on, or a tool that you want to know more about or want to learn more about, or something that you currently use that you just want to get some, new information about it, learn how to do something. When I take tons of tutorials, I have for years. Even I still every day I watch things that I know how to do, things that I I don't know why that's in there. That's a terrible camera to be in there. Let me get this one out of there. I don't know how that one got in the mix, but we're going to get rid of that one. Yeah, that shouldn't be in there. But yeah, so when I watch tutorials on things, I never watch it for that specific thing. I shouldn't say never. There are times, but I am trying to get ideas of things that I want to make or things that I want to do, and I will always just take some little piece of a tutorial. So oftentimes it's unexpected, but I'll see them do something and it triggers something in me saying, oh, that little technique would work great for that thing that I was thinking about doing. And then I'll just try it, and I will try to incorporate something that I picked up that person that was talking about had no idea that what they just did sparked some. I mean, they might have an idea. Like, I hope that things that people take from me cause a reaction in them to do something else. But it's never the exact thing that I'm watching. It's always something that I pick up along the way. Just little breadcrumbs is the way I think of them that you can use in your own projects. So as you start to learn After Effects, don't worry if you don't, you're never going to find a tutorial that is like start to finish what you want. That's not your goal. Your goal is to sort of get you in the ballpark of what it is that you're roughly trying to do. You learn little things, and then you compile those all together, and you're just going to make your own little system. And then before you know it, you're just going to start doing that same thing, and you're going to build another thing, and then hopefully you develop a style. The style ends up being the things that you remember how to do and the things that you learn first, and then you just, again, you're going to watch another tutorial and be like, oh, if I use that, I could actually do that other thing that I didn't know how to do. So hopefully that makes sense. And with everything, just don't be afraid to get into the program and just make messes. Like, I just experiment all day long with stuff, and sometimes you just accidentally make something pretty cool. So definitely experiment and just play around, and before you know it, you're going to be picking up skills without realizing it. So stay at it. And on that note, I think since it's getting kind of quiet, I am going to sign off for tonight. Be back next Monday, and I will try to put something together. Probably Screenflow-ish. We'll see what the vibe is, or see what I can get together. But each week, again, I want to do some sort of start to finish thing, or something that I think is going to be helpful. So if there's something happening during the week that I'm realizing people are really talking about, maybe I'll try to incorporate something that's a little more current, or I usually try to be I am conscious of the latest, try to keep my finger on the pulse of what creators are actually doing, and try to stick in that area of helping people learn that one thing, or that thing that'll help them get to where they want to be. So, rambling, I will see you next week. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for watching, and we will see ya.